All right. Well, there we go. Looks like it automatically. I'm testing out this timer thing, so looks like that is working. Hey, just want to say hello, authentic leaders, and welcome to Authentic Leader Live. This is a live broadcast of a future podcast recording that will be edited and published later. You can actually check out more than 100 podcast episodes on my website, including more than 70 interviews. Today, I'm going to talk about why one critical delegation step is ignored by most technology leaders, and then also how to fix it. I got to mute this real quick. There we go. Well, the Authentic Leader Show is the podcast for technology leaders and other industry leaders who are mastering the art of delegation to lead high performing technology teams. Now, as we learn more about what listeners are looking for, we are continuing to adjust the content that we offered here at Authentic Leader. There is one leadership topic that we continue to hear more than any other, and it happens to be one of my favorite and well polished topics. It's a topic that leaders struggle with most, with almost every leader that I've worked with, and they've really worked to develop this skill. Now, in my experience, leaders struggle with applying a consistent delegation methodology and strategy. Additionally, what leaders tend to avoid is the accountability part of delegation. Holding people accountable to the work that they have accepted, it feels hard. Hey, I get it. Leaders typically avoid the accountability part because they either feel that they shouldn't have to hold people accountable because it's just their job just to do what they're told to do, right? Or they honestly are avoiding the conflict that comes from holding people accountable. You're gonna begin hearing a lot more about delegation and accountability in the coming weeks and even months. Now, there's a repeated behavior by technology leaders that I work with when delegating work. And they have this repeated behavior because they see so many other leaders with this same behavior. They feel that they don't have time for this one critical step, and they maybe have never made time to fix it, or they just don't know how to fix it, is what I've found. Now, unless this behavior is fixed, technology leaders will continue to struggle to consistently delegate work. The work that is assigned and delegated, the less work actually is ultimately getting done in the grand scheme of things, or the work that is getting done through delegation is not being done as required. And then additionally, we all know about the missing deadlines and not meeting the deadlines for the work that's getting done. They also lose influence with their team, their peers, and others. And that influence continues to deteriorate over time as they are ineffective at delegating work to their team and to others. And ultimately, their career success for the leader, it's impacted, of course, right? Because you have to be an effective delegator if you're going to lead any kind of team. But even though this one step, it's going to be very simple that I'm going to share with you. You're almost to the point where you're going to say, I mean, Chris, are you dedicating an entire episode to this? It is, though, I will say, the most common, most ignored critical step when it comes to delegation. Now, you may be surprised to hear that this critical step, it's ignored by all leaders and all levels of leaders, from first-time supervisors and project managers to even senior C-level executives at Fortune 500 companies. I've seen it throughout the entire spectrum of leadership. Now, when I was first promoted to a titled leadership role, I failed as a leader, and I have shared that transparently numerous times in my podcast. I also failed, of course, at the delegation part of leadership. Now, a big part of my delegation failure was acting like my boss, who appeared to quickly and confidently just dole out assignments. It seemed like he just instinctively knew what to delegate, when to delegate, and who to delegate to. And I thought that if I were going to be successful as a leader, that that's what I needed to do too. What I eventually learned is that my leadership was not being judged by how quickly I delegated work. There is no world record for anyone who cares about, there is no world record that anyone cares about, I should say, I'll say it once more because I messed up that whole line. There is no world record for anyone who cares about and says that any leader needs to delegate just within seconds. I also eventually learned that when I take a little time to plan my delegation success, it ultimately increases. Now, I noticed that it matters most that I just took a few minutes to plan what I was going to delegate, decide who I was going to delegate to, determine why I chose them above anyone else, and then also decide when I needed this assignment to be completed. Now, I also noticed that what seemed like an effort to plan before delegating, because it feels like an effort, it feels like time I don't have sometimes, that it really wasn't that hard, nor did it take really that much time. And it really is just a slight pause for the return on investment of successful delegation. Now, when I help leaders with their delegation strategy, we start with this habit of planning by answering just a few simple questions before delegation. Now, of course, there's much more to becoming a master delegator, but starting with taking a few minutes to plan each delegation helps all other delegation factors really to fall into place. Now, like many other leaders, one of my long term clients struggled with this new habit of planning their delegation. Their leadership style was just a shoot from the hip style. You may have worked with these folks. We ultimately got to a Dr. Phil moment when I asked, well, how is that working for you? Well, it wasn't. The shoot from the hip leadership style, it really does, I admit, it looks cool in the moment. But when it comes down to delegation, it isn't cool when delegation fails and ultimately erodes your effectiveness as a leader. If you take nothing else from this conversation here today, just take a few minutes to pause and think through your delegation and see how a little planning increase your delegation success. If you can relate to anything that I shared today, or if you have any questions, put a comment right here. I will respond, or you can just DM me or reach out to me through my LinkedIn profile. Now, next month, I will be hosting a free delegation workshop. I'll be giving away all that you need to know to become a delegation master. If you would like to learn more about this workshop, message me or leave me a comment below and I will get you all of the details. We'll check one more thing here real quick. Looks like we are doing good. As we wrap up, I'd encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can find me at I am Christopher Jones. You can also find more information and other free resources when you go to christopherrjones.com. Hey, I want to thank you for joining us today. Please come back next week for another podcast episode. Next week, we will have another Authentic Leader Live right here on LinkedIn and my YouTube channel.